NBA 2K pulled ahead in their battle with NBA Live a long time ago. Gone are the days where we all had two basketball games that we equally enjoyed, or where we at least got similar enjoyment from both. These days, you're either playing 2K and complaining about the details of the gameplay, or playing Live swearing that because of 2K's laziness they'll catch up one day. But how did it just magically end up this way? Why did, over the course of the 2000s, a majority of us just happen to migrate from one game to the other representing the same sport? Today, you're gonna get the full story that involves the fatal mistake EA made that all but sealed their fate in the basketball market. So you have Visual Concepts, which was founded in 1988. Believe it or not, in the year 1995, they were actually working for EA Sports as they were employed to develop that year's Madden title that would launch with Sony's new PlayStation. The only problem was that Visual Concepts was doing a bit too much for its own good at the time. As in, the game they were creating wasn't ideal to work with the PlayStation's memory, and they wouldn't be able to get the game to function properly in time to launch. Thus, EA cancelled Madden 96 for the PlayStation, which was a big blow considering they were trying to capitalize on the hype of the new system. Soon afterwards, Visual Concepts was approached by Sega with the goal of developing a new basketball title. They did so, and although the game, NBA Action 98, didn't do well on the market, Sega was impressed enough with their work that they purchased the company in 1999, while directing them to work on both NBA and NFL games for the upcoming Dreamcast. However, it was at this point that EA made a preemptive strike. They came in and offered to make all sports games for Sega under the condition that nobody else developed them. And a move like that would have pushed Visual Concepts into another lane, meaning NBA 2K would have never come to fruition. But in a history-altering decision, Sega rejected that offer, and thus, one of the most competitive video game rivalries of the 2000s was born. Mind you, 2K didn't even have a name at the time. It arose from the big Y2K crisis everyone was afraid of at the end of that century. And with that, both NFL 2K and NBA 2K were born. NFL 2K went on to become the Dreamcast top-selling game, but none of it lasted too long as Sega left the console industry as the PS2 and Xbox hit the market. It was around this time that EA tried one more time to form an alliance by offering to purchase Visual Concepts outright. Maybe it would have been awesome to have all of them under one roof making our sports games, but Visual chose to compete with EA instead, which, all things considered, was a monumental task that I can't believe they took on. And for a while, EA was clearly on top. Madden was the football game that everybody either had or wanted, and NBA Live was the basketball game we were all playing with our friends and cousins. 2K on the other hand was doing a great job with their games, but they were simply the smaller brand, so it was hard to get any kind of recognition. I can tell you based off of memory that when I had Live 05 and my brother had NBA 2K5, I ventured to the other side from time to time and found that 2K was a much more accurate hoops title. My heart was familiar with Live, so that was my main for the time being. And 2K knew consumers felt this way, so for NFL 2K5, an attempt to get people just to try the game, they sold it for $19.99 while Madden released around its usual $50. Not only was NFL 2K received as a fan favorite, but it was much cheaper than its competitor, which forced EA to bring their price down to $29.99. But just when it looked like 2K had gained some footing in the market, EA went for the kill shot, only they didn't realize they were also aiming at themselves in a way. EA had struck an exclusive licensing deal with the NFL and its players, meaning that they were now the only company with the rights to make an authentic NFL game. This was absolutely crushing for the moment as Visual Concepts had covered so much ground with NFL 2K5 that they likely would have overtaken Madden one day the same way they ended up doing Live. But as it would turn out, this was just a minor setback for a major comeback. In 2005, Sega finally sold Visual Concepts to their current home at Take-Two Interactive. Take-Two truly believed in what 2K was becoming on the basketball front, so they chose to stick with that name going forward. And moving on from there, 2K was able to set up their win for the future. Without a football game to develop, all of their focus and resources went into producing the best basketball game possible each year. Meanwhile, EA was still splitting its time between both Madden and Live. So it's very unironic that this was almost exactly the year in which 2K became a flat-out better basketball game than Live. You may recall my Live 05 video where I talked about how that was the last time I truly loved a live game. And while a lot of people did like 06 as well, you can't tell me with a straight face that Live has had one game better than 2K since the introduction of the PlayStation 3. See, while EA continued having to fulfill an obligation to two huge fan bases that expected greatness, 2K could put more energy into satisfying one large segment. And because of it, they got better and better and better until the point where a new batch of consoles released, where 2K looked like this and Live looked like this. Largely responsible for the evolution of 2K basketball is gameplay director Mike Wang. He identified the simple problem that, in 2K, there was no difference in how each player actually played. He realized that if you remove the player models, they were all shooting and moving the same way. So for the development of NBA 2K7, he actually studied footage and reenacted the shots of the NBA's biggest stars to add that differentiation between players. That's a big deal, because 11 years later, we take for granted that each player has their own style. It seems like a small detail, but it's one that NBA Live still hasn't mastered this many years later. And that's really where 2K has widened the gap between them and Live every year. While Live has consistently had the problem of players moving way too much like an arcade game, 2K has only gotten better at replicating what each individual player does on the court in real life. And in 2011, 2K began the process of widening that gap in other places when they added legend teams to the game. The roster has largely expanded since then, and even those guys who retired decades ago have authentic forms and signature moves that allow us to reenact the game's history. Well, at least at a basic level. I'll admit some of these teams don't really play like themselves, but it was definitely a step in the right direction. It got so accurate and detailed that during NBA 2K11, there was an entire channel dedicated to recreating all of Michael Jordan's greatest moments, and there were enough animations in the game to make it seem like the real thing. So forget that the game has issues we hate every year. The glitches, the frustrating animations, the constant fight to balance offense and defense. At the core of the NBA Live and NBA 2K battle is the simple fact that one game has become far more authentic than the other since EA took the licensing deal in 2005. And that's not a hard fact to observe when you look at them side by side. 2K may not be a perfect game, and they are certainly lazy in some areas like keeping player models updated throughout the year, but at a base level, they are far and wide closer to mastering every basic detail of the game year by year. Even look at Live 19. EA has yet to master something as simple as jersey authenticity. The numbers are spread out weird, and the physics often don't match what's going on with the player. And at best, when you consider everything about the game, with the concurrent existence of NBA 2K, Live doesn't play like a fully acceptable current-gen basketball game. That's really been their main problem for a while now in competing with 2K. At least on this generation of consoles, Live has yet to produce a single product that could fully stand up to even NBA 2K14. Even the commentary in Live sounds closer to something you would have expected in the mid-2000s. And on last generation's consoles, 2K was constantly trending closer and closer to the game we watch on TV, while Live eventually culminated to this before bowing out of the game officially. This literally goes on for as far back as you're willing to look. For Christ's sake, look at NBA Live 07. Bro, even for 2007 standards, this is an abomination. That's not to say Live was just completely failing back then. NBA Live 08 and 09 weren't bad, but there's no questioning which way each franchise was trending. So in conclusion, EA sabotaged themselves in the NBA game market. Acquiring the exclusive rights to make NFL games was kind of necessary for them to continue making a profit, but it didn't give them the stronghold on both markets that they thought they would have. Ideally, I think as fans we may have enjoyed a combination between Visual Concepts and EA back when that offer was made. Maybe it would have been that dream scenario where we got the best elements from each game combined into one. It would even be better for us if Live was a strong competitor today. As amazing a job as 2K does simulating basketball at the basic level, they clearly cut corners in some places and just get flat out greedy in others. So who knows what the future holds for both games, but these are the events that led up to 2K going from being an underdog to the leader in basketball video games.